With no chance of increasing European economic sanctions against Russia for its military incursion in Ukraine, the best hope is for leaders here to maintain existing sanctions due to expire next month. On this, the president won the backing of re-elected British Prime Minister David Cameron.
We think that there can be a peaceful diplomatic resolution to this problem, but it's going to require that Europe and the United States and the transatlantic partnership, as well as the world, stay vigilant.
Plenty of promises and pacts emerging from the G7 meetings in Germany. This despite the fact some are still steaming about President Obama caught quaffing a beer in the morning hours. Please, people, this is Germany, where they still brush their teeth with a good lager. Everything from agreeing to phase out fossil fuels entirely by the end of this century and limit global warming to below 2 degrees and much more. Then there's this guy named Putin. No big deal, just seeking to rebuild Soviet Russia and threaten anyone and everyone that he possibly can. Let's get to this and more on this side of reality with columnist from the National Review Online, along with being a Newsmax contributor, John Fund, joined by Michael Warren, staff writer for the Weekly Standard. Gentlemen, I thank you both for being here. And John, I'm going to begin with you because we have to start out with the president and ISIS, where he said at the G7 on Monday, quote, "We don't yet have a complete strategy for ISIS because it requires commitments on the part of the Iraqis." Let's see, no real strategy yet, part of the Iraqis. I mean, isn't this all just shocking to you, though, John? And maybe he's right.
Well, the president was at the G7 meeting, and the Iraqi president was sitting right next to him for some points at the meeting, and the president ignored him, didn't say anything, didn't acknowledge him. Now, maybe they had some private conversation, but to have that play out in public is just a shocking symbol of just how detached this president has been, and to some extent continues to be, on this entire subject.
So there's a good point, Michael, because if the president is indeed saying this and you have the other guy right next to you, you should at least be saying something that might make him feel good. Does this tell us that, again, as the Republican National Committee wrote, what's the president been doing for the last 10 months, that he has no clue what the next 10 months will carry either?
Right. I think the president has given voice to the obvious thing about what's going on in Iraq right now in this fight against ISIS, which is America doesn't have a strategy, and he doesn't seem very interested in thinking about getting a strategy going. I mean, it's all about sort of, well, we're working on this, we're considering things. I think the fact that he wasn't even acknowledging the Iraqi president, as John said, was a perfect symbol, was a perfect metaphor for the way President Obama views Iraq. It's not something that really ought to be dealt with. It's something that ought to be put off to the side, finished up as quickly as possible, even when events incur and mess up, I think, what his whole plan of his presidency was, which is to get out of Iraq physically and mentally. So I think what we're seeing here are the fruits, if you will, of that policy.
John, let me get back to you, and let's talk to the aforementioned Vladimir Putin I mentioned, because everything they're talking about at the G7, they keep talking about Russian aggression in Ukraine. Putin was excluded for the third time. This just seems like, once again, John, we're hearing nothing more than mouthpieces working here because they're still not doing anything. But not only that, John, what can they do? Because it would seem that still to this day, Putin has them over a barrel, and there's not much they can do that will faze him.
Well, there's several things that can be done. The first thing they're doing, which is maintaining the existing sanctions, but I just came from the Oslo Freedom Forum, which was a collection of all the human rights activists from around the world. And there's a general consensus that what really can hurt Putin and his inner circle is by extending the Magnitsky list, which is a list of Russian officials who are denied access to Western banking institutions and denied travel rights. Right now, it ranges in the dozens. If we extended that to hundreds of people and even up to 2,000 of the nomenclatura in Russia, then they would take notice, because Putin's power ultimately rests with the oligarchs and the people of wealth that he has enriched through crony situations. And I think they would start to at least put pressure on Putin, because they like to travel, they like to spend their money in London and the Riviera, and they also like access to Western banking institutions.
Michael, let me get to you on this, because it certainly seems, again, this is just like the ISIS policy. Just let it go, kick it down the road, don't worry about it. The next president will get a hold of this. I'll just go ahead and take my time with this. Is it just that simple, or are we being naive in looking at what this president is doing?
It looks like scrambling. It looks like sort of trying to put together something that can work, getting a coalition at the last minute. Now, a few years ago, this was this promise from the Obama administration of a reset with Russia, that this was going to sort of start a brave new era of U.S.-Russian relationship. And of course, what we've seen is exactly what's happened, of Putin sort of rolling over any overtures from the United States of sort of moving beyond what Putin has, the sort of American-Russian relationship of the past. He's doing exactly what he wants to do and strong-arming the rest of Europe. You know, a stronger American diplomatic presence would have maybe wrapped up some kind of sanctions deal earlier. Instead, they're kind of scrambling around here. I think this is something that you're hearing from a lot of Republican presidential candidates about the need to sort of readdress Russia as an issue geopolitically. I've talked to several candidates who bring it up without me even asking about that part of the region. I think this is going to be a major point of the 2016 elections because, of course, who was it that was supposed to be instituting that reset? Was Hillary Clinton.
I need a 10-second answer from both of you. First to you, Michael. The American Embassy in Indonesia celebrates the founding of America July 4th, 1 month early to avoid conflict with Ramadan. Good idea or bad idea?
It's probably a good idea. This is what diplomacy is supposed to be about, and sort of showing that the United States is welcoming of sort of a pluralism that isn't seen in a lot of countries like Indonesia.
And thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us. Coming up next, Insider's Dope from inside that Beltway on Bernie Sanders, Bobby Jindal, and Donald Trump. Always time to drop a dime and tell us exactly what you think about what's happening here. Drop it to us at newsmax.com/comments. Go to Facebook at The Hardline. Tell us what you think, or on Twitter at Hardline. 24/7. Do it today.